Have you ever wondered about the Catholic Church's stance during the harrowing times of the African slave trade? How did an institution founded on principles of love and compassion navigate and even endorse such a dark chapter in human history? Do you know a little about the shocking role of the Catholic Church during the slave trade? No. Today we are going to reveal it from its initial support of slavery to its eventual and resounding opposition. Join us as we dive deep into the shocking role of the Catholic Church during the slave trade era. On May 24, 1888, an ethnically diverse group of pilgrims led by Cardinal Charles Lavigiere awaited Pope Leo XIII in the Apostolic Palace in Rome. They were from North Africa and the Diocese of Lyon, France, and had brought camels and gazelles as gifts for the Pope. The year marked the Golden Jubilee of Leo's ordination to the priesthood, and he was to receive numerous gifts and meet countless well-wishers. What distinguished this group of pilgrims were the 12 African men at its forefront, all of whom had previously been enslaved. Their freedom was bought by Lavigiere and his missionaries. Their presence was symbolic of an unofficial celebration of Pope Leo's forthcoming encyclical on slavery. Earlier that year, on February 10, Brazilian abolitionist Joaquim Nabuco requested Leo to pen this encyclical. Brazil was nearing the end of its slave era, and Nabuco believed a papal statement against slavery would further inspire the devout Catholic regent, Princess Isabel, to support abolition. The encyclical, however, faced a delay due to the anti-abolition stance of Brazil's prime minister. Still, Brazil abolished slavery on May 13. The encyclical Implurimus was publicly released on May 24, but dated May 5, suggesting Pope Leo's prior support for abolition. This encyclical, along with the subsequent Catholicae Ecclesiae, marked a historic shift. Pope Leo XIII altered the Church's stance on slavery, positioning the Catholic Church firmly alongside abolitionism for the first time. Leo XIII's groundbreaking condemnation of slavery is not widely recognized among many Catholics or frequently cited in church history. This oversight is due to the Church's intricate history with slavery and prevalent misconceptions. Do you know recently several Catholic writers with good intentions have provided accounts of the Church's relationship with slavery that contain inaccuracies? Yes, inaccurate information for portraying the history. But today we are here to reveal every darkest secret behind this conspiracy. You just stay tuned and watch the video till the end. Many of these accounts aim to defend the Church. In 2005, Cardinal Avery Dulles wrote that popes always denounced the African slave trade but never directly condemned slavery. Other defenders claim the Church has consistently opposed slavery. These defenses, while intending to protect the Church's reputation, have caused confusion and hindered the Church's confrontation with its unsettling history with slavery. Historical records reveal that the Catholic Church once supported slavery, endorsed the African slave trade, and allowed its members, including priests and religious figures, to own slaves. For instance, around 1760, the Jesuits alone owned over 20,000 slaves. The Church's approval of slaveholding remained largely unknown due to efforts by popes to uphold a narrative defending the Church's reputation, potentially compromising the truth. The Church's stance on slavery began shifting subtly. In 1814, Pope Pius V sent private letters to the French and Spanish kings, urging them to denounce the slave trade, at Britain's behest. However, condemning the trade did not equate to denouncing slavery. The term slave trade specifically referred to transporting enslaved Africans to the New World. For instance, even as U.S. President Thomas Jefferson criticized the trade, he continued to own slaves. Similarly, Pope Pius's letters only addressed the trade, not slavery as a whole. In 1839, Pope Gregory XV's bull in Supremo Apostolatus publicly condemned the Atlantic slave trade, marking the first time a pope took such a stance after nearly 400 years of the trade's existence. Though the bull strongly denounced the trade, attributing it to Christians blinded by the lust of sordid greed, it did not explicitly address the matter of freeing existing slaves in the Americas. As a result, some U.S. abolitionists saw it as wholly anti-slavery, but Catholic bishops like John England and Francis Patrick Kenrick viewed it only as a condemnation of the international slave trade, similar to the U.S. stance. Without clarification from Gregory, Catholic slaveholding persisted in the U.S. and elsewhere, arguably without contravening church teachings. It remains a profound mystery why Gregory was the first pope to denounce the trade, especially since arguments against it had been made by theologians and activists for centuries. Dominican friar Bartolomé de las Casas in the 1540s was among the earliest to oppose the trade after recognizing its injustices. Gregory's decision, however, was unprecedented. Regrettably, Gregory also presented a skewed narrative in his bull, obscuring the Church's actual history with the slave trade. While Pius VI ambiguously claimed the Church had always rejected barbarous slavery, Gregory elaborated, suggesting that slavery was mitigated among Christians and was eradicated in many Christian nations due to the fading of pagan superstitions and the moral influence of Christian faith. According to Gregory, this progression was interrupted by avaricious Christians who either enslaved black and indigenous peoples or trafficked those already enslaved. Gregory XV portrayed the papacy as historically opposed to enslavements, citing past bulls and a 1462 letter from Pius II, letter from Pius I condemning the enslavement of neophytes. However, this representation was misleading. The Church's history with slavery was not a continuous move towards abolition. Early Christianity, even after becoming Rome's official religion, accepted slaveholding. Medieval Church broadened enslavement reasons, and notable theologians, including St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas, defended slavery. St. Gregory the Great even gave slaves as gifts. While popes indeed condemned the enslavement of indigenous peoples in the Americas, the African slave trade was endorsed by several popes from Nicholas V onwards. Gregory XVI implied that Pius II's letter showed the papacy's consistent disapproval of the trade. However, this letter only addressed the kidnapping of Catholic converts and aligned with Nicholas V's directives that allowed enslaving only non-Christians. This narrative's inaccuracies were recognized. The Portuguese consul in Brazil highlighted prior popes' approval of the slave trade despite Pius EI's letter and remarked that Scripture didn't oppose slavery. Interestingly, Gregory's portrayal might not have been entirely self-originated. Some abolitionist historians, like George Bancroft, had been pushing the idea of Christianity as historically anti-slavery. It's plausible Gregory believed in this version of history. Nonetheless, its incorporation in a papal bull meant this flawed account would gain significant traction. In 1888, Pope Leo XI's condemnation of not just the slave trade, but also slavery itself marked a historic theological shift. Where the Holy Office had once deemed slavery in line with natural and divine law, Leo now declared it contrary to both. He incorporated theological arguments that abolitionists had been promoting for centuries, which most pro-slavery Catholic theologians had ignored. These abolitionist sentiments were further echoed by his successors in their anti-slavery documents. However, Leo, while praiseworthy for his abolitionist stance, distorted church history, enhancing Gregory's portrayal of a consistent anti-slavery church narrative. Leo wrongly credited additional popes, including some who endorsed slavery, with opposing it. This flawed narrative persisted. Even St. John Paul II, who apologized for Christians' role in the slave trade, mistakenly cited a pope's condemnation of it. The Church's shift in slavery teaching is notable, but it's essential to first confront its history before diving into theological implications. The Church, at its highest authority, endorsed slavery, one of history's most heinous crimes, for nearly 4 centuries. Throughout the Atlantic slave trade, around 12.5 million Africans were forced into slavery. Almost 2 million died during transport. Survivors and their descendants endured a life of forced labor with owners having complete control over their lives. It's crucial to recognize and address this painful past. For Catholics, the historical involvement of the Church in the transgressions of the Atlantic slave trade requires deep introspection. The Church's past decisions have had dire consequences for millions. Enslaved individuals suffered in squalid conditions on ships, faced sexual abuse, and many were spiritually disoriented after being told their oppression was sanctioned by the Church. The pressing question is, how many lives were adversely affected because of the Church's reluctance to unequivocally denounce these inhuman practices? To move forward, a genuine reconciliation process is indispensable. Acknowledging these historical wrongdoings is a pivotal first step. Historical theologians, as early as the 16th century, emphasized the moral obligation to offer restitution to those enslaved. Suggestions from past theologians even include the idea of future generations of slaveholders compensating the descendants of the enslaved. While certain religious communities, like the Jesuits in the U.S., have embarked on such reconciliation initiatives, it is imperative for the Vatican to follow suit. Consideration could be given to the formation of an international commission or convening a synod, given the magnitude of lives affected by the trade. Pope Leo XIII Otis Opus 1888 proclamation against slavery was a commendable rectification of the Church's previous stance. Subsequent popes have built on this, condemning not only historical slavery, but also modern exploitative practices and human trafficking. Nevertheless, unaddressed historical sins cast long shadows. To genuinely heal and move forward, bold and courageous actions are required. It's not merely about accepting past mistakes, but about undertaking meaningful steps toward restitution and reconciliation. In the face of such immense historical errors, a deep commitment to restorative justice, guided by the principles of God's love and justice, is the need of the hour.